Hello, class. This is John. Hello, Professor Sullen as well, and here to talk a little bit about informal learning in virtual worlds. I read through three of the papers this week: Steinkuhler and Duncan, Steinkuhler on our own, and Peterson. Papers talked about the degree of scientific involvement and scientific material in discussions of games, in particular World of Warcraft. The second paper went into more detail of the level of reading in these games and talked about how students can have their ability to read above their normal reading level when the material interests them, such as being related to one of the games they play. So Peterson talks about computerized games and 3D simulations in the context of second language learning, and as we'll see from the example, not just language, but also some cultural learning. All right, the Steinkuhler and Duncan paper, perhaps most notably, reviewing a sample of the discussion threads, found that about 86% of the material was actually productive forms of discussion and problem solving. So we're talking about things like how you can solve problems within the game. In this case, the game being Warcraft. There's the example below talks about being able to choose a slower spell and being able to live longer. Steinkuhler then, on her own in 2011, did some more detailed study with respect to the reading material, and first found that most of the information was related to things like information seeking. Perhaps more importantly, the second part of the study discussed the level of the reading, and much of this material was written pretty much at, they list 11.8, so let's call it a grade 12 level. So if you're able to get through this material, it's probably a good thing with respect to where you are in literacy in high school. The third study, what they did is they compared some school-related readings with assigned game-related readings. So the key here is the students didn't get to pick exactly, the game or the type of material. And in those contexts, they really just read at about their normal reading performance. When Steinkuhler changed study number 3 so that participants were able to choose the topic of text, then they found that the readers were able to step up and read as many as 8 grades above their ability with high accuracy, seemingly simply because this was text that they were interested in. Peterson reviews a number of different technologies that have been used for second language learning or second language acquisition, and suggests that there is compelling evidence that simulation and gaming may facilitate certain aspects of second language learning, and we will be providing an example. Okay, if all goes well, then we should be showing you some examples next.
Hello, and welcome to the ThoughtBot World of Warcraft database tutorial. This is the first section of the tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to show you navigating ThoughtBot. ThoughtBot is great. There's so much good information here for World of Warcraft players. Let's start by using the search field. You'll notice I've clicked the insert into the field so we can now type. Let's say you're doing a quest in Tanaris, and you want to know something about Andre Firebeard. You've got a quest to go find him and kill him. Well, you don't know where the heck he is, so let's put him in here and click the Go button. Okay, now notice we got all kinds of information come up about Andre Firebeard. Tells you what zone. You can look him up on a map. And apparently Andre gets around because he's not only is Tanaris, but he also hits Hills of Brad, Foothills, and sometimes the Swamp of Sorrows. So there's a lot of information about Andre right there. Now remember we said we're coming in here for the quest. Here's the start of our quest right here. Here's a link to the quest right here. So you have all this information. Now if you just click this link about Andre, you get you get this information about him. You look at the map on him and some of the same information we have, but notice now that we have comments people have put in. And here's one of the best comments of all right here. If you want to find Andre Firebeard, this comment tells you that he stands at 73,46 on your map. If you have a map enhancer installed, such as Cosmos or Titan, then when you look at your map in the World of Warcraft, you'll get these coordinates on your map, and you can just run on down to those coordinates, and then you'll be at a good start for finding Andre. Let's go back one level.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of Wowhead Weekly. We have got a ton of news to cover this week, but first up I have to tell you about our sponsors. Wowhead Weekly is sponsored by Full Sail University, and when you're watching this on YouTube you're going to see an awesome clip explaining exactly what it is they do right here. If you've ever considered working behind the scenes to create video games, Full Sail University offers programs that can prepare you for a future in the industry. Whether you're interested in coding, art, producing or mobile game development, there's a game degree program at Full Sail University that can teach you the tools, technology and workflow used by today's studios. Full Sail University has offered game programs for more than a decade, and graduates have worked on titles such as Grand Theft Auto, the Call of Duty series, Assassin's Creed and many more. Full Sail students receive a laptop along with game industry software at a deep institutional discount, and Full Sail University also offers a variety of campus and online degrees in fields related to the entertainment and media industry. You can visit fullsail.edu/wowweekly to one. But first up, I have to introduce my co-host, Wowhead Site Manager Peculiar. How are you doing this week, Perk?
Getting ready for 6.1, very excited. Also freezing in New York, so...
Yeah. Wow, your mic is spiking so hard. I just pulled you right down. Let's see how that goes.
Okay.
It's really, really noisy, that high-tech clap. I know, right? So every week before we do the show, I do a clap to sync audio because it's the easiest way for me to do it. So that's very, very technical. But yeah, we've got a ton of news this week to talk about for patch 6.1. We found out that it is coming on the 24th of February, so next Tuesday for the US, and the 25th of February in the EU, because obviously, as we all know, EU gets patches a day later than the US. Poor EU, and this is because of the way that time zones work. They couldn't possibly do it the other way around. So, they've had stuff, I think the launch of Mr. Pandaria actually went EU-US on the same exact date.
There was one really, I think it was the launch, because people were like, oh, EU finally, is ahead, so this is how US feels all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of, one of those times where it did actually happen like that. But usually
that allow them to train within their own operational contexts. Trainees are instilled with a general understanding of their operational environment, a basic understanding of the cultural practices specific to their country of deployment, and the fundamental language skills needed to perform daily tasks. During any one of the Alelo courses, learner skills are assessed against the desired training outcome. Based on those results, learners are provided with immediate feedback that facilitates rapid learning and enhanced skill development.
Not quite.
Remediation mode is a hallmark of Alelo's courseware. If trainees do not receive a passing score, they can choose to review only the materials necessary to improve their performance.
Well done.
This enables the learner to move through the course at an accelerated pace while reinforcing cultural awareness and language skills. Alelo uses game-based technology to create mission simulation exercises that allow individuals or small teams to practice what they have learned. This holistic approach cements the information in the trainee's mind and results in sustained learning. Alelo
Greetings to you all, players. This episode of Explaining Mechanics will tell you about one of the most important aspects of the game, armor penetration. Understanding armor penetration algorithms is essential for every player. In point of fact, it can help you inflict more damage to enemy vehicles and protect your own vehicle against hostile fire more effectively. This is why this episode will teach you to protect your tank, and the next one will tell you about destroying enemy tanks. Remember that World of Tanks is a game, not a training simulator. We do our best to keep it aligned with real tank combat principles, but some artificiality is inevitable in order to make the battles more dynamic. The actual processes calculating the effects of a shell hitting armor are too complex to be calculated on the fly, and the range of consequences is so broad that in comparison, Brownian motion looks simple. For example, if a shell tries to penetrate armor head-on, it would seem to have its maximum penetration potential. But in real battles, a shell can break apart due to severe internal stress, resulting in zero penetration potential. Game physics allow for a 25% fluctuation compared to the value in the description. For example, if the penetration value of your MS-1's main gun is 51mm, then its real value will range from 38mm to 64mm. The damage value range is calculated the same way. Before we start discussing penetration mechanics and geometry theory, let's explain some terms we are going to use. Take a point on the armor and draw a tangent through it. A straight line perpendicular to the tangent drawn through this point is the normal axis, or the perpendicular. Now, don't you wish you'd paid attention in geometry class in school? Let's move further and explain what impact angle is. It is the angle between the normal axis and the shell path from the point of impact. For example, if this angle is 0 degrees, the penetration probability is at its highest, and if it is 80 degrees, then the shell is more likely to ricochet. It should also be noted that many players consider the impact angle to be the angle between the tangent and the shell path. For example, they'll say that ricochet chances are high if the impact angle is less than 30 degrees. However, we'll stick to the terms used by our developers and the military and compare the angle to the normal axis. Another term is effective armor thickness. If the impact angle is large, the thickness of the armor is actually larger than the nominal armor thickness in the description. This effective armor thickness you actually have to pierce can be calculated as the ratio of armor thickness to the impact angle cosine. So now you're also regretting sleeping through algebra, right? Of course, you know by now that there are various types of shells. These shells have different effects when striking enemy armor. Armor-piercing shells are subject to normalization and ricochet rules in full force and effect. Sabot shells differ from armor-piercing shells only in their increased penetration potential. High explosive shells don't ricochet and have lower penetration values, but can inflict damage even if exploding right on the armor or even near the vehicle. Heat shells have increased penetration and don't ricochet, but their drawback is that they get no advantage from normalization rules. Now it's time to summarize armor penetration theory and move on to practical recommendations for armor penetration. Take aim and fire. Your shell hits the enemy vehicle on its spaced armor. What processes take their place next? The first step. The server calculates the path of the shell according to the ballistic formula, determines the point of impact of the shell and its speed vector at that moment. Then the angle between the normal axis and the armor at the impact point is calculated. If this angle exceeds 70 degrees and the shell's caliber is less than triple the armor thickness at that point, the shell will ricochet. Now it's time for the most interesting part of our program. We'll tell you some tactical techniques that can help you protect your tank in battle. Can we use mathematical theory for that? Of course we can. Now we'll explain several basic techniques that are based on this information. So let's go. Technique number 1, parking your tank at an angle. This is the so-called invincibility position. You should position your tank so it is diagonal to enemy tanks, so their shells will hit your armor at an angle and the effective armor thickness will be at its peak. To do this right, you should be familiar with your tank's armor. If you do it just right, the enemy will have considerable difficulties trying to penetrate your armor. Here's an example using two well-known vehicles. The Soviet heavy tank IS-7 is armored so heavily in the front and poorly on its sides that it's better to face the enemy head-on than diagonally. On the other hand, the German Panzer VI Tiger is more resistant when parked at an angle due to its massive flat frontal armor. Technique number 2, peeking around the corner. You should always drive cutting corners so as to protect your vulnerable hull side and your tank's tracks. You should also keep in mind the composition of your vehicle armor so that enemy shells hit only the most protected parts of it. You should expose your tracks only in case if your enemy has just taken a shot or doesn't see you. Don't forget this basic rule of tank construction. Almost every vehicle is protected better on its front than on its sides. And it is protected better on its sides than from behind or from above. This is why you should keep your front and frontal angles turned toward your most dangerous opponents. Technique number 3, making use of horizontal rocking. You can perform this common technique by driving your vehicle from left to right and back in short dashes. With this trick, your enemy won't be able to aim at your weak spots accurately and fire at your vertical armor gaps. This is especially helpful when your armor is relatively flat. While reloading, you can rotate your turret. We warn you that the enemy will have major difficulties aiming at its sides. Technique number 4, becoming a bait fish. Now that's a challenge. You have to be a real pro to do this right. Let your enemy fire at your hull side, then quickly turn into a diagonal position. This way the shell will ricochet. As a result, your tank won't get damaged. Sudden, surprising movements are always useful in an engagement if you can manage to keep your crosshairs on the target. Nevertheless, don't forget that rotating the hull also decreases its speed. Technique number 5, try dueling with your enemy from behind cover. A tank's turret armor is usually thicker than its hull armor. This means you should try to hide your vulnerable glacis plate behind some cover. Indestructible obstacles, for example, a disabled tank or a hill, are perfect for a hull-down position. However, single-shot obstacles like a car, a stone fence, or a shaky barn can only be used for this purpose. They will only protect you against 1 or 2 shots. Your enemy will have to aim at sides or running gear, the most protected parts of your tank. What is more, the impact angle of the enemy shells will be very large. You can get a ricochet, or one of your external modules might get damaged, but you won't lose any hit points.